Right, question 3. Okay, now you can see that there's two different types of graph here. We've got distance time graphs and velocity time graphs. Okay, and it's asking us about the type of motion for each of those different types of graphs. Well, let's just remind ourselves, what does the gradient of a distance time graph signify? Okay, the distance, well, we can work it out, can't we? Because we know from our maths lessons that the gradient is the rise over the run, which is delta y over delta x. So we look what's on the y-axis of this graph, and we'll see that that is s, the displacement or the distance, and delta s over delta t, okay, is the formula for velocity. So the gradient of these two graphs here is the velocity. So you can see that on this graph here, the gradient is constant, so that means that the velocity is constant. The gradient of this graph here, the gradient is 0, so that means that the velocity is 0. Now we can do a similar trick with the velocity time graphs. So you can see that this is delta y over delta x, which is the change in velocity over the change in time, and hopefully we know that the change in velocity over the change in time is the acceleration, right? Okay, so let's have a look at this. In this graph, we've got a constant acceleration. Okay, why? Because the line is a diagonal straight line, which means that it's got a constant gradient. Whereas on this line here, you can see that the gradient at the beginning is 0, and the gradient is getting larger and larger, right? So for this one, the gradient is increasing, so that means that the acceleration on this one is increasing. Now let's try and match that up to the statements below. Constant acceleration, we've already got that, that was r. Increasing acceleration, that was s. Okay, moving a constant velocity, that's graph P, and stationary, 0 velocity, that's graph Q. Job done. So the feature of a velocity time graph that can be used to determine the distance, okay, that is the area under the graph. Okay, so for example, on this graph here, it would be the shaded area there, or on this graph here, it would be that shaded area there. And that's question 3.